I have an idea that I'd like to throw by you.
Okay.
And it's based on something. Do you remember pen pals? Do you remember that when we were
Okay, so
kids?
pen pals, oh, yeah, you mean actual pen pals where you'd write back and forth?
Yeah, when we were kids.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, and
remember.
and one of the things, in retrospect, it was a long for me, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, way
um,
before Facebook and everything else where you could just message
exactly.
people. Yeah,
Back when people actually wrote letters,
yes.
But one of the things that in retrospect, I don't know whether in reality this is a memory that I had when I was a kid,
Mhm,
but looking back at it, one of the things that seemed really special about pen pals is that you had this person, you're a little kid,
mhm,
and your teacher introduced you to this idea that there are other little kids somewhere else that you probably will never meet face to face.
mhm.
And those other little kids would love to hear from you, like hear things from
Yeah,
you. And wouldn't you like to talk to them, write them a letter? And to me, one of the wonderful things about that is as a little kid, the thing that you're going to put in your letter is what's important to you, what's special
mhm,
to you. So if you
yeah,
have a special doll or a special ball or a pet, or if one of your parents or both of your parents are special, or your grandparents or your neighborhood, or if you're on a team, that's what you're going
mhm,
to write about. And so you write it down in a letter, and then you mail it to this kid, goes, you put it in the mailbox, and then you get a bunch of letters back. And in the letter that you get back, the other kid basically does the same thing.
right.
So
Yeah,
it's this way of sharing what's special in the kid world, which is
mhm,
another way of saying what's valuable. It's a way of
mhm,
sharing with other people what's valuable to you. So to kind of present this idea, what I'd like to start off with is what I would like to be the outcome. Okay, so the outcome of this
okay,
idea is to have people make videos, just like we're making a video right now, and
mhm,
they state what they value, what's important to them from all over the United States of America.
uh-huh,
And it's they may not be thinking of this, but
mhm,
what I want this program to do is to basically trigger a theological slash ethical imagination, which is
mhm,
something that we really don't use very much right
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Right now, platforms like this are really good at incentivizing vice, really good
right. 'Cause
at
that you get more
incentivizing
likes and
vice.
shares, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
exactly. But it's not very good at incentivizing virtue.
Thoughtfulness.
What's that?
Or being thoughtful about an idea,
Or
it's
being
all about,
thought.
like, how do you create a reaction, not how do you have a conversation or provoke a thought to think about and really go deep and ponder that for yourself and for
Exactly.
others. Yeah.
Exactly. So just like how, most kids probably didn't think, you know what, I'd like to write a letter to some kid I've never met before. There was an actual program that
Uh-huh.
encouraged them to do that. And
Yeah.
so the program that I have in mind that encourage people to share what they value would be a program that involves two sides to it. One would be the old fashioned theologian or
Mhm,
ethicist, so to make it where it's not necessarily religious, it could be secular.
mhm,
um, but have the kind of people, and as a writer, I'm sure you can relate to this. I just personally believe that
uh-huh.
writing is the best way to sharpen ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
You
Yes.
document your ideas,
Mhm,
you test your ideas. Someone else writes something, in response to what you've written that
mhm,
forces you to think about what you've written and to think about what they've written is very different from speaking, because speaking is just kind of right there in a moment, and you're using all these other different things to make what you're saying powerful. You can use the way you dress, you can use your tone of voice, you can use like the response you get from an audience, you can use all kind of things to make something that content wise is actually really weak seem really strong.
right. Well, I
Whereas
just wanna comment on that before we pass that one by because I totally agree with that, and yet I think people who are verbal processors like me, I'm not sure if you are or not,
hmm
the cultivation of ideas through real conversation, not through like the talking head talking
yeah.
at people, but that
hmm
actual, "Well, tell me more about that. Well, I might think about that for a little bit." So it doesn't have to it's not content driven in the sense that you have to have a talking point after talking point after talking point,
hmm
but that you have exploration and, moving through things like that can be really helpful as well for helping people work through their ideas. Because sometimes when it's locked in your own head, I
Hmm.
know this for me, like, I will sometimes have to go with even when I'm writing, have to go with, like, a call and response in my writing and challenge my own writing in a back and forth conversation way, because for me, those questions back are the things that really excavate for deeper information. So, but I also use the writing. So I think different people work in different ways, but we have lost the art of conversation as well in
What I
terms of conversation to take you deeper versus talking at each other or trying to prove your point.
That is true, and so it sounds like you're describing the writing group method, you know, so
Yeah,
you
kinda like that, yeah.
yeah, you present a section of your writing to the group, and then they critique it. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that, and I totally agree with you. But I still think my idea is that that actually gets to the other side of it. So my idea is you have like the old-fashioned sit in a tower, knock out your ideas. A lot of it is just abstraction, and
Mhm,
then you publish that text, and then
okay.
someone else is doing the same thing from a different perspective, and they're all being reviewed together in the context of this project.
Mhm,
But I also imagine that after you publish that, the person who publishes that text will want to dialogue about that text. Will want
yeah,
to talk about it. Kind of the
publicly.
way, investigative reporters will publish this, 7,000 word
Yeah,
article in like the Atlantic or something. And then they'll go on all these different podcasts and on cable news and talk about it, basically,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
To make it more accessible to people. But the other side of it though is you actually have the people from these communities. So the
Mhm,
theologian is ostensibly representing a particular community, be it, mainline Christians or evangelical Christians or Catholics or Muslim or
mhm,
Jewish or Judaism or Islam. And so what you can do is you can connect those people to actual communities which
mhm,
have leaders who are doing the speaking. That's the main thing that they do.
okay.
So you have preachers and rabbis, and you just have all of these people,
Mhm,
community leaders who are actually in the community, engaging with the community, and you connect the writer or the theologian or the
mhm,
ethicist with the community that's related to what they're arguing, and that way that whole enterprise, that whole project will
mhm,
encourage people. I'm imagining, like you throw water into a pond and you have this ripple effect. That's what I'm imagining would
okay.
happen is you'll have a ripple effect. And so some of the people like in a church in a small town somewhere probably have never read the stuff written by the theologian who is representing supposedly their values,
Right.
but they've had this ripple effect. They've heard about this project, it has a
Mhm,
name that's catchy and they want to be. Basically, they've been encouraged to express virtue, to even
mhm.
think, about their values in that way, and they want to make a statement about it. And so that's my idea. I'm just curious what you think of that.
Well, I think it's an interesting idea. It's interesting we're just talking about it right in here, but I think also part of this, especially when you bring up like theology with this, is one of the things about theology is it supports a worldview. It lays out this is how we view the world and how the virtues that we bring to this world and what fits into this world, what doesn't fit into this world. And oftentimes, people within their own theology, if they haven't experienced something outside of it that asks other questions, not in a confrontational way, but
Hmm.
in a probing way to understand one another, that you don't really look at and analyze, the fundamentals of your worldview from a contrasting perspective.